Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for a link to my Amazon store where I've compiled some of the very best items available, including some of my own personal recommendations. Thanks! What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a very special custom knife overview to share with you guys. This is a full Mixed Rider Custom, or MSC SNG Nightmare Grind with the Groot Finish, as I understand it. Now, couple of things here. This knife is ridiculously expensive. It is a full custom U.S. made knife. I mean, you know, up there in the realm of basically unobtainable to almost everybody, including me. This is not something I could ever afford to pick up myself. For that reason, as is the case with many other custom knife overviews on my channel, it is not really a review. This is more of a show and tell. It's basically just for your entertainment. If you are actually interested in picking up a Mixed Rider Custom, this guy came from, well, it was sent to me by Jeff Goodenow. And a lot of you guys know, you can see him on Instagram. Jeff Goodenow has been an enormous friend to the channel, and he is one of the only reasons that I'm able to get my hands on things like these and show you guys. This will be going back to Jeff. This was not given to me. But if you're actually interested in picking something like this up, they do appear periodically on eBoss Haas, which is actually where this guy came from. So yeah, periodically full Mixed Rider Customs do appear there. So that's where you can find some of these. Let me go ahead and say thank you once again to my generous patrons for supporting me right now. I appreciate it so much. If you'd like to check out my Patreon, get your hands on some of these cool stickers, there is, of course, a link down in the description. Your support would mean the world to me. Let's go ahead and get a measurement on this guy. Boy, this thing is beautiful. Tip to scale coming in at about 8 1/4. Blade length coming in at, it's actually like 3.6. And then your cutting edge, your cutting edge is actually about 2.8 inches because of this area and this little sharpening choil down here. That is very typical of Strider knives. You know, some people appreciate, you know, the extra hand room. Some people don't. It is what it is. That's the Strider knives have always kind of been the same thing. Let's go ahead and put it up against the, or do some size comparison. So first up, let me move this guy down here just a smidge. Up against the Ontario Rat Model 1. The Rat 1 is coming in at 8.6 inches overall. So you can see there, this is definitely a full-size knife. Just a little shorter than the Rat 1. How about up against the Spyderco PM2? Spyderco PM2 coming in at 8.3 inches overall, about the same length, even though the camera's making the Strider look a little longer. It actually, that's about even. Yeah, PM2's just a hair longer. You can see there how similar some Spyderco ergos are to Strider knives. In fact, I'll get out what people commonly refer to as the Spyderco, which is the Spyderco Shimon. Show you guys. I think the Shimon better represents the ergonomic lines of a Strider in the overall shape, right? Now, obviously, we have a crazy grind here, but yeah, that's why they call this the Spyderco. Shimon coming in at 8 1/4. Let's go ahead for Hinderer fans, because I know there's a lot of Hinderer versus Strider out there. Put it up against the ZT0562, which is exactly the same length as an XM18, 3.5 inch. So there you go, exactly the same length overall. How about up against the Benchmade Reptilian, or in this case the Ritter Hogue? Ritter Hogue is coming in at 8 inches overall. And last but not least, the Spyderco Para 3. Spyderco Para 3 is coming in at 7 1/4 inches overall. How's the action on this guy? This guy is running on phosphor bronze, as is the case with all Strider knives to my knowledge, and it is incredibly smooth. It's also very new, and it is breaking in. I'm sure a lot of you guys are wondering about this finish. To be honest, guys, I don't know exactly how they apply that finish. I actually looked into contacting Strider. I think they keep some things a secret and some things they're open about. I heard somewhere that some of the finishes are applied with, and I believe this is the exact quote, not 100% sure, but they have a machine or machines that are misbehaving in a way that is beneficial to them and helps them create finishes. I think, again, I cannot remember where I heard that, but I mean, a lot of this is, you know, they have a machine that helps them maybe do some things, and I don't know if it's applicable here or not. What I know is that the handmade element of this knife is basically 99%. So despite me using the word machine there, rest assured this is a full custom knife. almost entirely handmade. There are very few pieces of this knife that are not made by hand. But yeah, the finish itself and how they do it is a mystery to me. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because you can see there, it's, I mean, I don't know exactly how to describe this. It is rough, it's textured, and I'm sure you're wondering, what about the path for the detent ball? Nope, that part has been smoothed over. So it is very smooth. It's more of the hydraulic Sebenza action, but you can absolutely flick it open with that thumb hole, which is why I have really come to like Strider. Strider to me is like combining some of the best elements from my favorite Spyderco knives with some of the best elements from my favorite Hinderer knives. And I have really come to appreciate the ergonomic lines in Strider. And I realize, you know, the aesthetic here is very polarizing. People usually either absolutely love how Strider knives look, or they absolutely hate how Strider knives look. And I think I can understand that, because initially I was like, ew, no, don't like Strider. Not interested in those knives. They look weird. And then slowly over time, I kind of got curious, and I finally handled one. I was like, wow, okay, this makes way more sense. But that all depends on, you know, even if you like how it looks, you might not like, you know, the excess space for the choil. But anyways, we kind of got off track there. I would do a hardware check for you guys, but I don't have the right size thing for that pivot. I mean, it looks like a hex head, but truthfully, I don't want to touch this thing with my tools, because this is roughly a $2,500 knife. Yes, you heard me correct. This is a $2,500 knife. Are custom knives worth that type of money, right? We could argue all day about that. The fact of the matter is, though, when custom Striders go up for sale, they generally sell. So, you know, some people are going to be able to justify it. Most people, including myself, are not going to be able to. But I do appreciate the blood, sweat, and tears that goes into a custom piece, right? So it is what it is. The handle screws appear to be Torx and probably T10, I'm going to guess. But again, I'm not going to touch it with my tools. I don't think that it's really overly relevant, considering there are not a lot of people watching this video considering purchase this knife and then regularly taking it apart. But if you need to, it's either a T8 or a T10 on the body screws, and I think that's great. There's just 3 on each side, and then the pocket clip screw appears to be the same, and then it's probably a twin combination of hex heads for the pivot assembly. I do really like that you can see all the way through the pivots. I think that's neat. Some people are going to like that, some people aren't. I think that's something that Strider Knives does on customs and other maybe semi-custom variants, and I think it really looks nice. I will give you guys a measurement of blade stock thickness if I can find my calipers, which appear to be missing. There we go. They're underneath the Strider case there, which just looks like this. This is what it came in. Pretty neat. There you go. Most people don't buy knives like this for the case, so how extravagant or elaborate it is, I think, is fairly irrelevant. That's why the tape is on here, guys. People get upset with me for that tape, but it's to protect knives like this. Woo, that's a fat boy at 190 thousandths. So yeah, we are looking at some pretty insane thickness, but because of the very crazy grind on this thing, crazy grind on this thing, rest assured that this initial grind here is exceedingly thin behind the edge, and even this area up here isn't really that bad. Yeah, that is a very sharp edge initially right down here. But we do have titanium on both sides, fairly thick titanium, not anything crazy. Go ahead and put it up against the Spyderco PM2, and you can see there it is thick, but probably you guys were thinking, oh boy, if it's 190 thousandths, I bet the thing is just insanely thick. It's really not. And there is also slight contouring going on here, which is another thing I really appreciate about some of the Strider customs. Let's go ahead and put it up against the Spyderco Para 3 and PM2, two knives that have very awkward carry profiles and nobody ever complains about. You can see there that the tallest part of this knife is actually down here, right? So putting that directly up against the Spyderco, you can see at maximum height, it's just about exactly the same. Possibly the Spyderco still being just ever so slightly taller. What I'm saying is it's not really that big of a deal. This is a full-size knife, and it's a big knife, and there's no, to my knowledge, no internal milling on the inside. Yeah, all titanium. So this guy's going to come in heavy, but I bet it won't, you know, you guys won't be, you know, You guys will be happy to see that it's not insane-o heavy, right? Yeah, under 6 ounces, 5.61 ounces. My full titanium Hinder XM18 3.5 inch, right, and full titanium unmilled scales comes in at about 6.25 ounces, or the ones that I've owned in the past, which are many. So somehow this knife is coming in lighter with a thicker blade stock at the exact same length. No idea. But there you go, it is. All right, let's see here. We've talked about everything there, I believe. Let's go ahead and get to the meat and potatoes here. Look at this finish. This is called the Groot Finish, apparently, and that's a direct reference to Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy. If you haven't seen that movie, he's a gigantic tree-like structure that has, you know, that is alive and can kind of talk. He basically can just say Groot. But it looks exactly like his skin. I mean, that is a perfect way to describe that finish. There's some green and some brown. I mean, honestly, yeah, it looks like essentially the surface of a tree that has existed alone in the elements, untouched by man for however long. That's really what it looks like. How is this finish done? I have no idea. I have never seen a finish like that on titanium before. And yes, it is absolutely titanium. The deep greens, the bronze, the browns in there, right? Oh my gosh, it even extends to the pocket clip. And I think the contrast to this rough sort of, it's like, I don't want to, I mean, it's not orange peel. I mean, it's definitely more aggressive than orange peel. I mean, if you guys are wondering, touching this, yeah. Like if I took my fingernail, I could definitely grind my fingernail into that. And that's one of those things where, you know, people are like, oh, that'll cause so much excess friction while you're cutting. Yeah, but come on. I mean, this is, a lot of times I'll defend, like, you know, Hinder knives and Stryders and Chris Reeve that are around the $500 mark, right? Knives up to, you know, like Medford or Shirogorov or even Rockstead. As the cost of the knife goes up, there are less and less and less people who actually have acquired those things that will actually use them. But there are people out there who use them. I don't know how many people are carrying around a full custom Strider and using it. I'm sure there are a few, but I think it's safe to say that a lot of the finishes on this knife are on the knife, you know, for presentation. So yeah, I mean, what is the blade shape going to be great at, considering the finish, the geometry, right? I have no idea. I suppose, I mean, if you're going to use that really thin grind up there to make some kindling for a fire, or maybe slice an apple, and then you're going to use the, you know, the thicker edge to do more of your heavy cutting, or, you know, maybe even some stuff outside of that, I guess. That's as far as my knowledge goes on the intended purpose of the grind. But holy crap, does it look good. This was very professionally done. Look how it sort of curves out, almost like the beak of some sort of legendary warbird. That is crazy. I mean, I think Nightmare Grind is a very appropriate way to describe this grind. The flat runs out something like, you know, 70%, 75% the length of the blade. And then you have this beautiful swedge, plenty of thickness carried out to the tip. So I guess if you're going to use this, yeah, I suppose that finish might slow you down a little bit. And this certainly isn't going to be the most optimal knife for continuous cutting on cardboard. And it's not going to be appropriate for EDC. Will it do the job? Sure. Any, you know, halfway, you know, barely sharpened edge in almost any geometry can be forced through material. But again, I don't know that absolute cutting efficiency on, you know, like continuous simple tasks was the main goal in creating this object. I think with a lot of mixed rider customs, you know, the main purpose is to create something that is functional and is durable in the rare event somebody's actually going to use it, but it's just wild and crazy and just kind of primal and beast-like, right? And that's, yeah, I mean, mission accomplished. Holy crap. The thumb hole here, a little bit sharp on the inside, but again, I don't really care. You know, you can easily engage it. You can flick it out. It's also very easy to just thumb out. I mean, it's nice, and it'll continue to break in over time. I love their design on the external stops. There's no question that those are just stops. They're not to be used as thumb studs. They're small enough to be completely out of the way of everything. I mean, yeah, you could engage it, but it's just use the hole, right? It's nowhere close to the cutting path, and that's because the cutting path doesn't start till way up here. Give you guys a look at those grind lines there. Oh my goodness. just absolutely stunning. Everything is just done to perfection on this thing. The forward choil on these knives, that is the area that really got me to fall in love with Strider knives. And it's the relationship between the overall ergonomics of this thing, right? Down here it's okay, but up here, this is about as comfortable as it gets for a folding knife. You know, yeah, you sacrifice a lot of meaningful cutting edge on a Strider, you know, by having that enormous forward choil, especially when it's coupled by this additional sharpening choil, but I just don't care. You know, there's not a lot of stuff in my life that, you know, I need, like a 3.5-inch blade will be able to do better than a 2.8-inch blade. I mean, yeah, I mean, there's a point where it's like, to me, it's like under 2 inches. Yeah, I might, you know, always need at least periodically something that's more than 2 inches long. But if we're talking about like the 2.5 to 3.5 inch mark, which is generally where I carry my knives, for me, a lot of times, and I do, you know, mostly like normal tasks and stuff, but even when I'm outside working, I mean, I'll use the rat and I'll use the Tough Light, and there's a huge difference in, you know, usable cutting edge between those two things. So yeah, how much meaningful cutting edge is sacrificed for that forward choil? It's trivial to me because I care more about the positioning of my hand, the relationship between my thumb and my index finger. This has absolute control written all over it, and you can feel it. There is no chance I would drop this knife while I was using it. Doesn't matter how hard I was using it. I mean, it just is friendly. Truthfully, no matter where you hold these things, they're just set up to be used, right? Whether you're just a regular person or you're a soldier or law enforcement, whatever, you know, they're just really, really friendly to the hand. And the funny thing is despite this really aggressive looking finish, it's actually knocked down quite a bit. All these areas, you know, looking kind of angular, it's actually quite nice to the touch. It's pleasant to the touch, and also during actual use, I think the only thing that would really bother me is the bill of that pocket clip and the position of the pocket clip. Everything else is fine, and truthfully, if I was actually going to use this in some wild hypothetical scenario, I would be wearing gloves, probably, right? If I'm using it for EDC, I don't need gloves, right? If I'm just doing simple tasks, if I'm going to go out and use it the way it was probably intended to be used, or the standard Strider SNG, SMF, or, you know, PT design, I don't think the PT is meant to be used hard, but SNG or SMF designs, if I was using them the way that they were intended to be used, I'd probably be wearing gloves, right? The heavy jimping back here is enough to catch your finger. It's not so aggressive. It's not like Medford aggressive, right? So it is comfortable to engage if you're not wearing gloves, but it will certainly do the job if you are wearing gloves, right? Love how the standoffs look. That's awesome. It's interesting that this one is shaped or has a little bit of a different design to it versus the ones back here. That's really, really cool. The pocket clip, I've never really liked the positioning of the pocket clip on Strider knives, and they have some designs where they've obviously, you know, kind of fixed it, right? They've moved it up here, which I think is a better position, but whatever. As I've talked about many times, I actually have a standard, well, it's not an actual Strider, it's a ProTech Strider SNG. They have it in the exact same place. Yeah, the butt end, I carry and use this knife. The butt end sticks out quite a bit. So you know, if you're actually going to carry this, it's going to be, yeah, like that much sticking out of the pocket. It's got a little lanyard hole that I guess you could say is prioritized over the clip. I think they figured out in some designs to just use this screw back here as the attachment. The screw that attaches the clip to the handle is also one of the integrity screws. So that's somewhat fixed in some of those designs, but you know, in this case, I really don't care. It does have a Hinderer LBS disc, so that is the over travel, and it's also the stabilizer. There's no insert, but it doesn't need one. That's carbonized titanium. It'll be very difficult for that to you know, wear quickly over time. There is plenty of engagement there. The lockout is absolutely solid. No question, no blade play. We're looking at something like 30% on lockup, and then I think, keep my hands off, yeah, we have a perfectly centered blade, which is what I would expect on a full custom knife. Wow, holy crap, this thing is crazy. There's no real conclusion, like I mean, it's meaningless for me to come to any sort of conclusion here other than, wow, this is incredible, and it is, in a way, wait, what's the right word? I'm having a brain fart. I can understand why it costs so much. I don't know that I would ever fork out that much money for a knife, but I get it. A lot of time, a lot of energy went into creating this, right? These are not pumped out like crazy. MSCs are very, very rare. and people who have actually acquired them are very lucky. You know, people who actually want to seek them out and have the means to acquire them, right? That's one thing, but then actually being able to acquire one is another thing altogether. It's my understanding that the Nightmare grind comes in a lot of different variations. In fact, you know, you can get the XL versions, you can get Nightmare Tantos, Nightmare Recurves, Nightmare whatever. You know, you look up MSC Nightmare grind on Google and you're going to see some of the craziest stuff you've ever seen in your entire life. This was a wonderful opportunity for me to take a look at this knife and just enjoy it. And while I certainly don't understand how they apply the finish, I understand the design philosophy behind a Strider knife. And I do, you know, if you want to go back, I've reviewed the SNG, the SMF, and the PT. You can get my thoughts on them. I think they're excellent knives. They're expensive, definitely, and even the regular ones are hard to find, but man, if you can get your hands on one, they certainly are excellent tools. And most of them are not ground this way. In fact, most of them, the standard ones, are ground with it's a very high grind. So even at 180 thousandths or so, it does come down to a nice, fairly thin edge, thinner than you'd expect. And they are excellent working tools. By the way, the steel on this guy, I know for a fact, is CPM at 20 CV. So that's pretty excellent. Boy, I don't know that there's a whole lot more that I can say, guys. I hope I showed you every last part of the knife that you were wanting to see. This was a lot of fun. It went on a lot longer than I thought it was going to, but I think this is pretty much the end of everything I have to say. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.